welcome to this special interview. We are in conversation today with Mr. Amit Mitra, the Finance, Commerce and Industries Minister for the state of West Bengal and also the chair of the Empowered Panel of Finance Ministers for the subject of GST. Thanks a lot, Mr. Mitra, for speaking with CNBC TV 18. The broader question and the bigger question. Your state has been one of the biggest proponents of GST. What happened? What went wrong? Why did the state trace back as far as GST bill was concerned?
I don't think the state traced back at all. There was a special session called for a very, very difficult and important subject, changing the name of the state. And that involved 3 hours to 4 hours of discussion. There was also a dengue issue which the opposition wanted to raise, and Mamata Banerjee is gracious in having discourse at the democratic level. That required several hours. We had a third topic which related to, raised again by both the government and the opposition. What was the center-state relations vis-a-vis flow of funds? So now if you have to do a GST in the middle of that one-day session, it would require at least 2-3 hours of discussion according to demands made by both sides of the floor. So West Bengal, led by Mamata Banerjee, has been the biggest supporter of GST. It was we who helped the most in not only Lok Sabha but in Rajya Sabha as well. In 2009 in our manifesto we had GST. So it is a matter of time, and already I believe only you needed 50% states to ratify, and it has been ratified. And after the assembly session, where we could not accommodate because of the local serious pressures of name change of the state, I have chaired an empowered committee meeting as a finance minister of West Bengal, where we called all the industry associations, company secretaries, chartered accountants and small and medium enterprises. So this is a work in progress.
So by when do you think would this be passed by your assembly now?
Well, it is a matter of next assembly meeting. Whenever it comes, we'll bring it up. But at this time, there is practically no need to go through this process as a binding issue because President has already given assent. We are the most important supporter of GST for the people of India.
Which is why it came as a surprise to many, and they said that possibly there are some issues that you want to sort out before you pass the bill. Is that one of the reasons?
Issues are parallel issues. Issues which relate to federalism in India. For example, today those are nothing to do with GST. For example, over 6,000 crores have not been received by the state, including 100 days work compensation. So it's an ongoing process. We have taken 26% equity in a deep sea port, Borshagar. We are also building our own state ports. There's conversation going on. So there are, in a state-center relations, we stand for federalism. This is an ongoing process. It's a different track altogether. So as far as we are concerned, the relationship government to government goes on with its processes. GST is for national interest.
Right.
And therefore, Mamata Banerjee stood as a leader in the country in supporting GST. So therefore, it will continue. And I continue to chair the Empowered Committee of Finance Ministers on behalf of my state.
So what's happening as far as the Empowered Panel's meetings are concerned in terms of the discussion, or rather the differences as far as rates is concerned? Some states say it should be raised up to as much as 24%, some say it should stay around 18%. How are those discussions going, and where do you think it will settle down?
I think a key point that your viewers should know is there are multiple rates given by researchers. So the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India suggested 15 to 15.5% in the average rate. Then you had at one time National Institute of Public Finance and Policy suggested 27%. And then there is Dr. Vijay Kelkar's committee report, which gave the first report on GST, suggested 12%. So this is a matter of revenue neutrality.
Right.
So that states' revenue is preserved. Different states may have different views, but what has happened is the Empowered Committee has fully given support unanimously to the fact that we have two principles. Principle one, GST rate should not be such that common people get inflationary pressure. Then what's the point of GST?
Right.
After all, end of the day, it is for the people. Second principle is it should not be so low that states do not get revenue. Centre has to compensate for 5 years and they don't have the money to compensate. Despite constitutional process, they may get into a problem. So it should be an optimal rate, not a maximal rate.
Where is that optimal rate coming up?
This is exactly what the GST Council will debate in the coming weeks. And I'm sure it will be a full debate.
But do you think between 20 to 22% is where it should land in terms of a cap?
I think it would be very difficult for me to hazard a number as a guess. It would be preempting the views of my other finance ministers of state.
If I talk to you as the finance minister of Bengal, what would your view be?
I would not present you the view here. I will present it at the GST Council. The reason is, we'll have to discuss it. We have to listen to each other. Only then, after listening to arguments of each other, along with the Union Finance Minister, who is the chair of the GST Council, we will arrive at a decision. It's too preemptive today for me to just give you a rate. It would be unfair and wrong.
No, I am not asking you to give me a rate and say that this is the rate that we will finalize, because obviously it's a discussion. There are so many states and union territories that would be discussing it. But from the perspective of a finance minister of a state, if you look at your revenues, if you look at the taxation systems and stuff, where do you think the cap could come up to?
I don't think I can hazard a number for you, because as chairman of the Empowered Committee, I speak...
but do you think 24% is quite high?
I just cannot give you a number. You may love a number. I'm not able to give you a number. Let it come up with the GST Council, which is happening very soon, I believe. Let it be discussed. It's a national issue. It's not a light-hearted issue.
Fair enough.
I can give you numbers in a light-hearted way. This is a very serious issue. I've given you the principle which the Empowered Committee has defined unanimously.
Right.
Not so high that the industry passes on that to the consumer, and there is inflationary pressure. In fact, during the discussion at the Empowered Committee with the Chambers of Commerce, one of the questions raised by finance ministers was, when taxes are lowered, taxes are raised, industry tends to pass on those taxes to the consumer. Why should they bear it?
Right.
When taxes get lowered, with GST may lower the tax incidence to industry, will the industry pass on this to the consumers? Very, very good debates on these. So I would say that we have defined the principle at the Empowered Committee of all finance ministers across political parties and across states.
For that panel, there's 2 months to discuss and come up to a consensus as far as all the issues are concerned. Do you think that's a fair enough time?
It depends on the intensity with which this is conducted. If you're going to do it at war footing every day, every week, where everybody becomes available, attempt will be to see how this can come up within a certain space of time. Also, it will depend on the number of industrial issues that come up. For example, today an industry has 5% VAT. And now it is going to face X% revenue neutral rate. That industry may be employing 20 million people. That industry will come up and say to you, please don't change my 5 to a much higher number. That has to be discussed at the GST Council. There may be categorization of areas where there's a sin good, there are luxury goods, there are non-luxury goods. All this has to be defined to the satisfaction of the entire GST Council. So all this will come on the table, and already the Empowered Committee has received many representations. It will go, I would think, into a 6,000 to 7,000 pages
from the industry and association
of representation from the industry, because we invited that, because there should be a dialogue. So all this has to be collated, structured, made into some kind of a framework.
Right.
And then on principles, this will be discussed at the GST Council.